You will never outperform the identity that you agree with. Never. You can have the best strategy in the world, the best frameworks, the best habits, the best morning routines, but none of it is going to take you further than the version of yourself you have quietly agreed to. And that agreement is invisible. It never gets written down. Nobody audits it. And it's running your business and your life right now. You're just not aware of it. Welcome back to Everyday Leadership. There was a time I did not think I would be saying those words. For the last, I think it's been four or 5 months, we've been in a break because I had to double down on business and life. And there was a period of time it was kicking my behind, if I'm being completely honest. The amount of things I was navigating as a founder, I genuinely thought I couldn't afford the time and the effort that goes into creating the podcast. And even got to a point where I was thinking, I'm just going to part this whole thing. I've done enough episodes. I'm good. But I kept coming back to it. The idea never left. I'll have that little quiet inside voice, but like, when are you going to get back to doing this then? And I think for me, the reason was very simple. Over the last 5, I think it's been 6 years now, actually 6 years, we've had over 200 plus guests on the podcast. I did a number of solo episodes. And one of the things that this podcast, shall I say, gives me, it's been a place where I can just flow. I can express myself with no brief, no deliverables attached, where I can talk to my clients. Some of them have come on the show where I can learn from other people and just be engaged in conversation in how they are leading themselves personally, professionally, where we can talk about life, faith, business, mindset, culture, and so much more. One thing I like to say to my clients all the time is always have at least one thing for yourself that is not linked to your business or money. Something that's an outlet for you that you can just do, you can just enjoy, and it's something that's creative. It helps you to think very, very differently and you learn from it. And for me, one of those things is the podcast. I didn't realize that until now, but we are back. I am not going to be as frequent as I used to be, at least for now, but I'll pick it back up again. We're going to have some amazing guests coming up over the next couple of months for you as well. But today, I want to start with a thing that has been running underneath everything for me over the last few months. Has become so crystal clear to me. And in that whole period as well, I looked at a lot of the work we have done with our clients over the last decade, work I did previously as well, when I worked in corporate, when I ran a different company, and just examining so many different things. And a couple of weeks ago, I was at an art studio with a friend of mine for her birthday. She's an amazing artist. And while we were talking, I was pushing her and when she's actually going to showcase her work so people could see it. And then she turned around at me and she asked, "What's your creative thing?" I said, "Ooh, I'm not creative." And as soon as I said those words, I stopped myself because they weren't true. But before I could even say anything further, she checked me. She checked me with the same energy I guess I have given to her over the years. And she was like, "Wait a minute, you're right. You put out a weekly newsletter. That's creative. You do a lot of stuff on social media. That's creative. You have a podcast that people listen to. That's creative. The way you put things together, the way you edit the clips, all that kind of stuff, that's creativity. So why are you saying that you're not creative?" And I started to laugh because that's a belief that I had to dismantle many, many years ago. When I worked in corporate, working in finance in particular, I used to say out loud, I am not a creative person. That's not my forte. My forte is very, very different. It's very logical, analytical, all those different elements and stuff like that. And here's what that sentence actually did for me. It was not a description of me. It was a permission slip that I refused to sign. There were ideas I had that I never put out. There was work I never made. There were rooms I never walked into. Not because I lacked the skill, but because the identity I had agreed with did not allow the behavior. Part of what helped me to get where I am now is having to let go of that, which is why I was laughing when my friend said that, and realizing that creativity comes in different forms and styles. Does not have to be a particular canvas. I can barely draw a stick man. Like, I trust me, you don't want that. But I can appreciate an artist's work, and being able to edit and think and write and splice videos together and all that kind of stuff that I do, that's just another level of creativity. And it's one I have done really, really well. In fact, when I think about it, here is when it actually turned around for me. Before I ever did any public speaking, I used to make these, I think they were 30 to 60-second Instagram videos because I was length at that time. And I'll just talk to the camera. Even though now that's turned into yapping. And this was, what, 10 years ago? So imagine, it's crazy how things kind of come back around. But anyway, I digress. I'll just talk straight to camera, and I'll come back from a run. So I looked a hot mess. It was sweaty. It wasn't polished. It was very authentically honest. And that was what I built my Instagram platform from, to over 100,000 plus people. The unpolished, unedited, just real talk version of myself with all those endorphins and chemicals bubbling from my run, just sharing. The reason I started there was because it was very helpful for me to be like, who can you be without any edits? What can you do to get past this blocker of I'm not a creative person? And at that point in time, it was also I'm not a public speaker. I like playing behind the background, behind the scenes. Remove all the barriers, remove all the excuses, just do it. Don't overthink it, just do it. And that principle shifted so much stuff for me. You guys know I'm a man of faith, so me being who I am, I'm going to talk about it. I went on a run one morning before the videos, and I had this internal dialogue conversation with myself. And I heard God say to me, so I thought God checked me. He convicted me. And he's basically said that I made you. I gave you the gift of creativity. You need to stop, put a limit on what I have given you, and you need to fully step into it. The identity had to move first, and then the work followed. Who I was and who I thought of myself had to shift first. And then after that, everything started to snowball from there. So something very familiar, something very similar, shall I say, has been happening in my business for the last couple of months. We've been blessed to do a lot of work, shall I say, with some big, major Fortune 50 companies over the last 7+ years in the UK, in the US, in Dubai, in some parts of Africa, some parts of Europe. It's been an absolute blessing. It's been amazing. But it's also been frustrating because it can be very, very slow. It can be slow from a business development perspective, and that's just got even slower. I'm never going to start there. But it can also be slow internally. Sometimes it can feel like you're trying to turn a massive ship the size of a Titanic around, and it's not budging, it's not moving. And that's where some of the frustration comes from. And then I started to look at some of the work we've done with smaller organizations. And this can be from anything from a 10-person company to 1,000, 2,000 plus company. And again, the size hasn't really mattered because some of these companies, some 5, 10 person companies, trust me, are making 7 figures, or some are making 8 figures plus, let alone some of the other ones that are quite big. It was more around what's the impact that we can have in those spaces? How can we directly impact both the founders or CEOs of those spaces, their teams, and then the wider organization? You can see it in the rooms. You can feel it in the rooms. You can see the ROI kind of flowing through. These are things that are very important to me because, yes, I definitely want to get paid. That is super important to me. I got bills to pay. I got lifestyle I want to live, and I'm in this game because I'm trying to build my own thing. 100%. But part of what also drives me is around the return on the investment. I want to see you grow. I want to see you develop. I want to see the impact the work is having. And then I also want to see that multiplier effect. That's what real return on investment looks like for me. So I had to ask myself, are you going after these big named organizations because that's where that impact is felt the most? Or are you going after them because of ego and that's what you feel like you need to do? My answer was, after doing the big organizations, I still love and enjoy those spaces and definitely still want to play in that. But actually, when it comes to real, true impact, smaller spaces, whether small organizations, I want to double down and play more on that sandpit. Now, interesting enough, we have been doing that. Probably about 20 to 30% of our work over the last decade has been in that space, but actually making it the real primary goal and driver is different. The advisory work, the strategy work, the angel investing that I have personally done in that space as well, all are kind of leading me into this. And I realized that I get the most value, let alone impact from those spaces. So therefore, when that question came to me, I had to get identity. Who am I? Who am I to think that I can go and work in that space? That space feels brand new, even though it isn't. There are other people already established in that space. So why would I think I can actually go in there and really, really do this? These were some of the back and forths that I was contemplating and exploring and questions I had to ask myself. It goes back to what I'm saying around identity. You never evolve past the person or the identity that you have. You never. So after I sat with myself, my identity had never been wedded to a corporate. It had never been wedded to an SME. My identity had been wedded to the impact that I wanted to have, the impact I want to have on the people that I work with. It's always been around how do I help the individual, their team get clarity so they know where their North Star is, and then help them to remove the magnets that can pull them off course, and then help them to get to their destination by supporting them, by challenging them, by partnering with them on that journey. That has been the work. Getting the best out of people so they're operating at their optimum. That has been the work. So when I say it was hard, it was not hard because the market was hard. It was hard because I was carrying an identity that did not belong to the work. That's the first thing I had to move and shift first. I was trying to focus on the market and business development, all the different elements and stuff like that, which is super important. But my identity comes before any strategy. My identity comes before any framework. Far too often, we lead the strategy and the framework, which has a ceiling on it. We forget that the identity is the core. Now, I want to say something to the founders listening, and I want to be honest about what that is. And this is my observation from working in both UK and the US markets. I'm not going to hand you a study, shall I say? This is what I've been seeing across 7+ years and 100 conversations. In the US, the dominant narrative for founders is go bigger, go faster, get help. That default assumption is that that a serious founder, I want to use those words, has coaches, advisors, they have paid support around them. When you're thinking in terms of how do I go to 3, 4, 5, 10 million, you are willing to spend 3 to 5K on average actually on what development looks like against that upside. So they take the risk, not because they have the certainty that that coach or advisor would work or that that program is a thing that will get them to the next level, but because they believe that they will figure it out and because they recognize that not taking that risk is the bigger risk. Nothing changes and they stay exactly where they are, which is what they don't want to do. So they happily invest in themselves, in their growth. Most of them start from zero. But when I'm in particular looking at founders who are on that 500K plus and above, this is standard. This is how they are talking. This is how those around them are talking. But coming to the UK, it's very, very different. The narrative right here is stay lean, be frugal, do not get ahead of yourself. So when it comes to any coaching, advisory, leadership work, all of that gets filed as discretionary overhead rather than growth infrastructure. And there's a real fear of being seen as wasteful, which I find super interesting. If I was to put it real simply, the US founder heard I'm building something big. So of course I pay for coaching, I pay for strategy and partnerships. The UK founder hears once I am big, then I will deserve that level of support. Can you see the two different mentalities? I want to sit on that for a second because it doesn't hold up. As a founder, inherently, you are a risk taker. You've left the job, you've signed the lease, you've made payroll in one way, shape, or form, even though there are days and months where you're like, how am I going to do this? You do not know where things are going to come from sometimes, but you have bet yourself and you've done it publicly. One asset that every single thing in the business runs through, which is you, that one asset you refuse to invest in. But how does that make any sense? You spend on the strategy, you will spend on the tools, you will read the books, watch the videos on the frameworks. All of them have a ceiling. Your operating system that everything flows through and goes through, you will refuse to upgrade. That is not prudence. That is an identity problem that is wearing prudence as a costume. In my opinion, who you believe you are shapes the life you live. And I know I'm not the first person to say it, but neuroscience backs this up to a point. So imagining your own future and thinking about who you are run through overlapping systems in the brain. What researchers call the default mode network. The same machinery that holds your sense of self, that builds the story about your life, is involved in when you picture your future self. Now, that doesn't mean that your identity switches your dreams on and off like as a light bulb. What it does mean is that these are not separate departments. Who you think you are and what you can vividly imagine for yourself are wired close together than most of us assume. In fact, for us to step away from the science and the data for a minute, let me go to the Bible. Proverbs 23:7. For as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. One of my favorite verses. Your inner beliefs shape your actions, and your actions shape your reality. Romans talks about the renewing of your mind for the same reason. If your mind is conformed to fear, to scarcity, and performance and status, your life will go one way. If it's renewed around what you actually are, it goes somewhere very, very different. For a founder like myself, this is in theology, and it's not theory. It's your operating system. See, if deep down you believe you are just a scrappy bootstrap founder trying not to fall, your mind will only offer you survival level futures. And your behavior will come to match with that. You will underinvest in yourself. You will avoid the bold moves. You will stay under a mill. And you will call it discipline. You are a capable creator entrusted with real potential. Your mind then begins to open up to a completely different set of rules and futures. Let's say that one more time. If you believe you're a capable creator entrusted with real potential, your mind opens up to a new, different set of futures. Bigger markets, bigger teams, better teams, because Lord knows when it comes to hiring, I got stories, actual impact. And you start behaving like someone who invests in the thing that makes all of it possible. Change the identity and you change the size of the future your brain is willing to help you build. It is that simple. Here's what happens naturally. The moment you go to dream big, the moment you go to vision, logic will kick in and it'll start talking. But I can't do that. But I don't have the funding. I don't have the network. I don't have the team. But, hence the name. And notice what that actually is. That is not analysis. That is your current identity policing the size of the pictures before you have finished drawing it. So the exercise is simple. No limitations whatsoever. So let me ask you this question. What is the future you are genuinely imagining? What's the future you're working towards? And if nothing was in your way, what would you write down? What would you do? Where would you be? How would you travel? Who would you be with? What is that future? We go big first, and then, only then, do we then come back with the tactics, the strategies, the sequencing, the numbers, all those different elements and stuff like that. When you lead with limitations first, that's small thinking, and you only ever creep forward. When you lead with a bigger vision, and then you fill in the gaps, you leap forward. So most founders typically do it the other way around. Well, I say most founders. When you think about a lot of the businesses that we talk about today, they did it the way I'm describing. Your Bezoses of the world, your Elons of the world, people I don't necessarily like, but I'm just using them as an example, the Steve Jobs of the world. You think about it, you think about the founder, you read the autobiography and you see exactly what I'm talking about. They always go big first and then they figure out the gaps. So many of them say the same thing. If I knew how hard or difficult it would have been, I wouldn't have done it. That's why when you start small, your brain, your logic, it will stop you. But when they have gone for the big vision and then be like, okay, cool, we're going to figure out the steps, and they start to move in one after the other, it got them there, but that big vision was driving them. That's what I'm talking about. Don't start from your limitation and then begin to wonder why the vision that you end up with looks suspiciously like the business you didn't really want in the first place. Let me step away from business for a minute and let me come back to even just how this can go in your day-to-day life. So my son, when he was in reception, he kept on getting into trouble. So we got called in. And the teacher's basically saying like, listen, your son's smart. He keeps on finishing his work super early and therefore he has nothing to do, idle hands. And his own fun is what's creating the problems. So naturally, like, well, give him more work. That's what you're there for. They were like, we don't have time for that. We are focused on the kids who are not finishing their work early. So our suggestion to you, in all honesty, is looking at how bright it is, look into alternative provision. The alternative provision was private school. Now, at the time of me talking about this and writing about this, we were poor. We were broke. My son had just come out of nursery. I calculated when my daughter was due to come out of nursery. Like, this was not what I wanted. I was already struggling. But then I'm hearing, this environment is not good for your son. He's going to keep on getting into trouble. You need to do something. So we started to look around, and then where we were, there was a school down the road, and it was a private school. Smaller classes, better environment, but it's a private school. That's more money than nursery was. How can I begin to think I can afford this? Who am I to even think I could afford this? These were just some of the questions that I was asking myself. And then I realized the fact that we had the destination to go in the first place, my mind was already open, a lot more open than I thought. My identity was already on that edge. And it now became that question. So what are you going to do? What kind of person are you? Are you the father that provides the best opportunity for his family, which is what you said you always wanted to do? Or are you one that steps back? This is just how I think. So I was like, okay, this is the best environment for him. He can go there next year because he still had a year left at reception. And actually my wife was like, how are we going to be able to afford this? We are barely getting by. And she was right. We were barely getting by. But it goes back to the identity. For me, who am I? What am I about? And what ended up happening was within, I think it was 9 months, I left the job I was in. Now, bear in mind, I had been looking for new opportunities and new roles. There was nothing. The market was dead. This was just, again, on the back end of the recession. So as you can imagine, the market was tight. And I was being told time and time again, you're not going to get something, you're not going to get something, you're not going to get something right now. You need to wait. Well, I couldn't afford to wait. So I ramped up my personal applications. And in fact, the levels to which I was applying for increased. It's already harder at this space, but I'm going to go even higher because I need to figure out a way to pay for this boy's fees for the next year. And it happened. I got a role. I was just very, very relaxed in those spaces. And then the interest in the spectrum at that point in time, the role banding was like 35K to 50K. I went in at 50K, which was very unheard of. They really liked me. I passed the interviews and they were like, yeah, but can we negotiate? I was like, sure. I'll take 500 off 49.5. And they agreed. So you would think with me having all those constraints in my head, with me recognizing that I need this job to be able to do what needs to happen, I'll be not relaxed. Relaxed is the wrong word. My negotiation will be a lot more tamer. It wasn't. I gave them 500 off. Now, here's what made it even funnier. After we agreed to that, and I went in and told my old workplace I'm leaving, they were like, well, we've paid for your chartered accountancy. You owe us, I think it was like 10 grand to cover us paying for this because you left before your timeline. I went to my new company and I was like, if you lot want me that badly, you need to pay for this. Negotiations were done. I only gave them 500 off what they wanted. They wanted to win more than that, but they said yes to it. And I still went back in afterwards. I'm like, if you want me, here is what's needed to be done. They paid it. So I didn't even lose out on 500 in the end. They paid it 10 grand, 10 plus to my old company. That's how much they wanted me. That's what I'm talking about around identity. I had to go through the steps of like, not, my gosh, I'm living in absolute poverty and I can't even imagine being able to afford fees for my son to, okay, this is what needs to happen. Who am I? Who do I need to become? What do I need to do to really amplify this? And I need to be bold. I need to be courageous. Both my kids went through private school. Different way of thinking. Not what I planned, not what I wanted, what was required of me. That is what I'm talking about when I talk about identity shifts. This is what identity does. It does not just change what you want. It changes what you are willing to ask for. So here's what I want you to take from all of this. Identity is not a feeling. It is an agreement. See, somewhere along the lines, you signed it. Probably without reading it. Like, we don't read the fine print. Probably when you were young And it made complete sense to sign it. And since then, you've just been honoring the terms of what you signed up to. I'm not creative was an agreement. I only work with big organizations was an agreement. Once I am big, then I will deserve that level of support is an agreement. And it's costing you, founders, leaders, so much. So before you go back to your strategy, your funnel, your hiring plan, your next quarter, I want you to sit with these 3 questions. What have I agreed to be that I have never actually examined? Where is my behavior perfectly consistent with an identity I claim to have outgrown? If I really believed I was the person I say I am building, what would I do this week that I'm not doing? Do not answer those quickly. The speed of the answer is usually the size of the avoidance. You will never outperform the identity that you agree with, which means the work is not to try harder inside the existing agreement. The work is to change what you agreed to, and everything after that gets easier. Not because the pressure disappears. The pressure never disappears. Lord knows I wish it did. But because a different person is carrying it. This is the work we do when I talk about partnering with founders, with senior leaders. Those who recognize that autopilot mode that I can easily go into. Those who realize that actually there's something that's running underneath the surface, underneath the strategy that is holding them back. And they want to do something about that. We partner alongside of you to ensure that you achieve your goals. You achieve the life that you've intentionally designed. Not the one that's happened to you, but the one that you have intentionally designed. A business will never outgrow past its leader. A team will never outgrow its leader. You cannot solve this with a framework. You can't solve it with strategy. You solve it by working on that person that everything runs through. So I'll say it again. If you want to get involved, if you want someone to come alongside of you, if you're growing, if you're scaling, and you want to work on you as much as you're working on the business, reach out to us. It's a mix of coaching and advisory and strategy all kind of coming together. And that's why I call it partnership. It's not about the label. It's what actually happens when we're in those rooms and in those environments. That is the key. So if you're curious about that, reach out to us. We're definitely here to help. And if you're in the UK and you're a founder, I'm running a founder reset in September. It's going to be just outside London. Spaces are very, very limited. It's a 1-day thing for those who are working in the business and need to work on the business and are also very time poor. That's why we're doing it for 1 day only. But a lot of things are going to shift. We're going to get into the operating system. We're going to get you out of the way of you being a bottleneck in your system. And we're going to get you to that goal that you require. It's not for everyone, but if you're interested, I look forward to hearing from you. Now, with that said, it's good to be back. It's good to have this conversation. It's good to record this. We're going to have some amazing, amazing guests coming up over the next couple of months and probably a lot more solo episodes. I really enjoyed doing this. Look forward to seeing you all. This is Everyday Leadership.